It's hard to forget that Anakin Skywalker was one of the greatest starfighter pilots in the galaxy. Whenever his name comes up in conversation, his mastery with a lightsaber and his skill behind the Delta 7 Jedi fighter are the first things usually mentioned. And that skill even carried over into his descent to the dark side when he served Emperor Palpatine as the Sith Lord, Darth Vader. But throughout his 20 years of service, Vader was rarely called upon to use his expert piloting skills to solve problems. Sure, his ability to pilot his TIE Advance saved his life more than a handful of times, but it was simply another tool in his arsenal. More often than not, Vader could win a fight by using any number of methods: intimidation, a simple force choke, a quick swing from his crimson lightsaber blade, and yes, an aerial assault from his TIE's turbo laser cannons. But once, after the destruction of the first Death Star, Palpatine was in desperate need of help. He needed the greatest pilot in the galaxy, and there was only one person he could call on: his apprentice, Darth Vader. What happened, and why was Vader the only one who could help? Join me, your host Lim, as we answer these questions and more in today's underrated moment. Before we get going, I wanted to remind you about our 10,000 subscriber giveaway. It's the same as always. All you have to do is subscribe, like, and then answer a simple question and leave it in the comments below. Today's question is, who was the Jedi that forged the very first Force sabers for the Jedi of Tython? Don't worry, I'll leave the answer somewhere in this video, and the moment you see it, you just have to write it in the comments and we'll enter you. Remember to subscribe as well. Now, on to today's story. The galaxy was far from safe. Even though the first Death Star had been destroyed, and its fragmented debris was still orbiting the moon of Yavin 4, the Empire was rebuilding, and their leader, Palpatine, wouldn't allow the rebel victory to last. So he sent out an order, an edict. The Empire would rebuild and create a new Death Star, despite the failings of the first. From the weapons manufacturing world of Simoon 1 to the mines of the Outer Rim, Imperial forces started to double their production. But there was a problem. The Empire's forces were far more aggressive and iron-fisted in the aftermath of their defeat, but the rebellion was even more emboldened. Although they lacked the actual manpower to confront the Emperor's naval fleet in open battle, the rebels' guerrilla tactics of small, surprise attacks were troubling. At first, Palpatine considered them nothing more than an annoyance. But then, he noticed something. The rebels were only ever to deal a bit of superficial damage during each of their ambushes. Hardly something that would warrant a full retaliation. And with so many worlds to oppress, Palpatine worried that if he spent too much time chasing a few rogue groups of X-Wings around the galaxy, he might lose control of more important planets or sectors. But with each successful raid, the rebellion was growing more and more confident in their skills. So much so that in their latest mission, the Rebel Strike Force was able to board an Imperial Star Destroyer and steal a highly classified piece of equipment, a power conductor for the brand new Death Star. At that time, the small unit of Rebel Special Forces hardly could fathom what was in their possession. After all, they had no clue that the Emperor might try to rebuild the massive space station after suffering such a momentous defeat. And on any normal day, Palpatine would have continued to follow the same course of ignoring these rebels. But this time was different. That Death Star component actually took months to create. Without it, Palpatine's final plan and the inevitable confrontation above Endor would have gone much differently. So, the Emperor ordered the finest TIE pilots into the nearby asteroid field in order to chase the rebel pilots into the open. But every time he sent his own forces into the cluster of massive brown rocks, they'd only make it a few kilometers before the rebel defenses killed them all. With no better alternatives, the Emperor summoned Darth Vader into a meeting via holoprojector and ordered him to intervene. Clearly, the pilots we have sent have not been adequate. The Empire has need of its greatest pilot. The Empire has need of you, Lord Vader, Palpatine said briefly. It was rare that the Emperor would ever offer Vader any type of flattery. After all, In their interactions, Darth Sidious was never shy about how disappointed with Vader's wasted potential he was. When Palpatine first started grooming Anakin, he was only 9 years old, and the Sith Lord could sense that young Skywalker could grow up to be one of the most powerful Force users in the entire galaxy. But after the duel on Mustafar, and without his limbs, Vader was little more than a child who angrily hacked and chopped his way through enemies. At least, that's what Palpatine would often say. But here, just a few months before the Battle of Endor, where the Empire tried to use the Rebellion's superior intel-gathering agencies against them, Palpatine called Vader the greatest pilot in the Empire. Perhaps that was a sign of how desperate he had truly become, and how desperate he was to lay the trap aboard the second Death Star. Thanks again for checking out this newest episode of Underrated Moments. What do you guys think of this? Is this kind of an uncharacteristic, nice moment between Palpatine and Vader? After all, if you followed this channel for a while, you've seen exactly how cruel Palpatine could be to Vader. Almost immediately after Vader returned from Mustafar, Palpatine launched a barrage of Force lightning at his apprentice, simply because Vader accidentally Force pushed him. And the abuse just continued from there. So why would Palpatine be kind of nice and full of flattery here? I guess the obvious reason is he just wanted help. He needed Vader's help here to get to the rebels. But maybe there's something more going on. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for coming back. See you next time.